This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are you doing on this wonderful Wednesday, the 3rd day of April? You're watching the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, or on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can tune into the Joe Gaither Show or watch us as well always on Twitter, on Facebook, or on YouTube at Joe Gaither 6, where you can find all our social media machines. We're going to have a fun Wednesday today. Look, it's all about the Final Four. You guys can follow our coverage at BamaCentral.com. We are going to be traveling out to Phoenix, Arizona here in about 24 hours. My friend Katie Wyndham, Blake Byler, and myself are going to be giving you all kinds of coverage from the Final Four out there in Phoenix. So that's where this program will start. You can follow Katie Wyndham at Katie Wyndham _, Blake Byler at Blake Byler 45, and myself, as always, at Joe Gaither 6, as we're going to be out there in Arizona starting tomorrow evening. So what I want to do today, I want to do 3 or 4 different things, and you guys can always join me on the comments at Joe Gaither 6 on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube if there's something that you like or you don't like, or you want to move the conversation in a different direction. I want to talk about the way that Alabama could beat the UConn Huskies, 11.5-point underdogs. The Huskies look unbeatable. They haven't lost a game since February 20th. They've only lost 3 games this year. I want to talk about how Alabama, what the recipe is, what the keys to the game are for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I want to talk about Rylan Griffin and his Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan comments yesterday. I want to talk about Parker Brailsford, take it to a little football, and I want to talk about open practice. Alabama basketball held a little bit of open practice yesterday in Colma Coliseum. It was great. We appreciate everybody for having us. You can view that open practice session right there on YouTube at BamaCentral. You can check out what we saw. But that's what I want to talk about today. Those 4 things. I want to talk about how Alabama can beat UConn, Rylan Griffin and his Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan comments, open practice yesterday, and what in the world is going on with Parker Brailsford on the Alabama football team. What do you want to start with? You want to start with UConn? I want to start with UConn. Let's go with it. Keys to beating UConn. Look, the UConn Huskies look unbeatable. Dan Hurley and his team are, what are they, 34-3? Is that what it is? They're absolutely 35-3 now. Excuse me. Don't want to shortchange them. 11.5-point favorites. They are tied for the fourth largest overdog. Alabama, the fourth largest underdog in Final Four history. So, there's no way Alabama can win. 0 chance. Alabama, you're just lucky to be there. Be happy, be grateful to be in the game and to be invited to play in the UConn Invitational, going for back-to-back national championships, and their team is absolutely loaded. But they're not unbeatable. They've lost 3 games this year. As we just mentioned, they lost to Creighton, Seton Hall, and Kansas. Now, you can look at extenuating circumstances for each of those losses, whether Klingon was at 100%, whether they were playing on the road. You take the Creighton loss. Their last loss was, a couple of days after going on the road and basically mollywopping the Marquette. So they mollywop Marquette, and they beat them badly. Then they go on the road and lose to Creighton. Creighton, the Blue Jays, make 14 3-point shots and really beat UConn pretty handily. What was that final score, just to be specific? They beat them 85, right? No, that was Seton Hall. Yeah, they beat them 85-66, February 20th. So it's not to say that they are an unbeatable team. Now, UConn has beat the brakes off of everybody in the tournament so far. Obviously, they're gonna do the thing to Stetson, right? The 16 seed. Then they take Northwestern behind the woodshed. San Diego State, you never had a chance. And Illinois, 30-0 run in the second half to get to the Final Four. So they definitely look the part of unbeatable monster. Tristan Newton and Donovan Klingon basically being 1 and 1A as being the superstars. But I think that Alex Caravan is just as important to this team. Alabama is going to have to be really on their P's and Q's. Now, how do they do it? All right, so I think Alabama has to kind of copy the Creighton model. But here's the deal. UConn hasn't seen anybody that's played to the speed, played to the pace that Alabama has played with this year. Does that serve to Alabama's advantage? I'd say yes. Does that mean that Alabama will win just because of the pace battle? No, I think UConn's going to do everything in their power to play a little bit slower, to slow the game down as best they can. And I think that Dan Hurley is so well coached. Their tempo is 315th in the country compared to Alabama, that's ninth. You saw Alabama basically more or less, I don't want to be beating your chest too much, Alabama, but more or less running North Carolina out of the gym. Yeah, it's a 2-point win, but they ran them off the floor and basically fatigued them through the second half, and that's really what carried Alabama. That and Grant Nelson's strong game, strong effort on the offensive end. But you fatigued the North Carolina Tar Heels because of your pace. North Carolina tried to keep up with you and ended up not being controlled with fouling. Yeah, out of control fouling and shooting rather poorly from beyond the arc from R.J. Davis and a couple of other players. I know obviously Cormac Ryan had a good game, but really on the whole, they shot, the second half percentage was pretty terrible. So can Alabama's pace? I think Dan Hurley's going to do everything in their power to slow the game down. They don't turn the basketball over that much, averaging 9.8 turnovers a game. So really effective taking care of the basketball throughout the season. But let's look at their losses against Creighton, Seton Hall, and Kansas. Combined, UConn went 18 of 65 from the 3-point line, 27% from beyond the arc. Now, they've got some 3-point shooters. Obviously, Cam Spencer's a 44% 3-point shooter, and Alex Caravan's making it at 38%. So, and, Hassan Diarra has made a couple as well at 35%. So, they've got some 3-point shooters that can come in and make some shots, but they've also, you go on the road in those three environments, Kansas, Seton Hall, and Creighton, and you have bad shooting nights. Now you look at the other side for Creighton, for Kansas, and for Seton Hall, they went combined 26 of 50. So 52%. Now, they didn't shoot a high rate. The 53-point attempts over the 3 games is not really that many 3-point attempts. But UConn, you lose to Creighton. I think Creighton was 14 of 26, 14 of 28. So they were right at 50%. Seton Hall basically didn't take any 3-pointers, and Kansas met them in the middle. So, look, if you shoot well, if you have the bad night that UConn, if UConn ends up on a bad shooting night themselves, and you meet that with a good shooting night, you protect the basketball. You don't allow UConn to get out into transition as they did against Illinois on their 30-0 run. Well, I think UConn likes to play slow, but they can play fast. Can they play as fast as Alabama? That remains to be seen. Will they get out of control fouling? That might be the game plan. For Alabama, I think you've got to hit 16 3-point shots. Against North Carolina, I said 14 was the number, or 30%. They didn't hit 14, but they were much higher. I think they were 43% against North Carolina. They shot, 11 or 12? So it makes me think, okay, that's a high number, Joe. 16 3-pointers, that's a high number. Let's look at it. Alabama's made 13 or more 3-pointers in how many games this year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different games this year. And how many times have they gone 16 or more? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 different times this year they've made 16 or more 3-point shots. So they can be done. And those came against Purdue, those came against Eastern Kentucky, came against LSU, Texas A&M, and most recently against the Clemson Tigers in the Elite Eight matchup. So Alabama has hit a lot of 3-point shots in games. Look, you go against Purdue, you put up, 46 3-pointers. I think you're going to have to get a ton of shots up. You just got to let it fly. Make it rain from deep. And whether it's Mark Sears hitting from the logo, whether it's Jaron Stevenson going 4 of 5, kind of in a supplementary role, if it's Latrell Wrightsell getting back into action, I think you've got to do whatever you can do to get to 16 3-point makes. Now, you don't want to get to 16 3-point makes at the detriment of inefficiency. You heard Coach Nate Oates talk about it after the Elite Eight game. It's all about, the offense is not about 3-point shots. It's about efficiency. So you don't want to go 16 of 50, 55. No, you want to go 16 of 40, 16 of 40 or better. That's 40%. You go 16 of 40 or better, you're going to be in the ball game when the clock's ticking down with 3 minutes left. And really, if you're in Alabama, that's all you're asking for. Can you get into the ball game? Can you stay into the ball game with and when the clock hits 3 minutes left in the game? When you hit that last under 4 media timeout, obviously you're going to have timeouts from either bench, but when you hit that under 4 media timeout, you want to say, okay, Alabama, we got a shot. We're within 4, we're within 5. You got a shot. You can hang in there. And I think you go 16 of 40 or better. I mean, my goodness, you go better. You might look up at the 3-minute mark with just a little bit of time left, and you might be ahead. So I think you got to hit 16 threes. And while Alabama, you say, oh, you don't live and die by the 3. I definitely don't think that they do. I think this is one of the cases where, you have to be efficient. Rylan Griffin's been really, really outstanding from beyond the arc. During the NCAA tournament, you saw Jaron Stevenson make at a high rate against Clemson. It was Grant Nelson kind of stepping up against North Carolina. Will it be Sam Walters? I mean, Latrell Wright, so he had his good game in the first round. I think Latrell is basically on track to play on Saturday. We'll talk about that when we talk about open practice. But whoever it is, you got to get somebody that's going to give you 4 or 5 made 3-point shots. And then hopefully you get 2 or 3 from the rest of the crew. I mean, you have how many shooters on the team? Mark Sears, Aaron Estrada, Jaron Stevenson, Grant Nelson, Sam Walters, Latrell. You got 6 shooters, 6, 7 shooters, Rylan Griffin. So you get 2 or 3 from every single one of them. Then you can get your 16 3-point makes. And I think that's going to be the number one number that you're going to want to watch out for offensively. Well, maybe it's not the number one number. The number one number to me, it might be turnovers. You look at UConn, and through their 30-0 run over Illinois, they made them turn the basketball over a ton of times. You look at UConn's, okay, let me flip it to game by game. Let me flip it to opponents. Yeah, they turned Stonehill over 21 times in a game. New Hampshire, 16 times in a game. Providence, 15 times. How many times did they force more than 10 turnovers in a game? Oh, my gosh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 21, 2, 3, 4, 25 times. How many games have they played? 38 games. 25 out of their 38 games have they forced 10 or more turnovers. And so Alabama, you look at your basically path through the NCAA tournament, and you have protected the basketball relatively well. I know you turned it over a little bit more in the Grand Canyon game than you wanted to, and I think you ended up with 11 against North Carolina. Was it 14 against Clemson? I think is what it was. But basically, you haven't done a terrible job protecting the basketball, but you need to be better. You need to be a little better because Dan Hurley, the UConn Huskies, they're going to have hands in the passing lanes. They're going to be trying to get deflections. They're going to be diving after loose balls. The thing about Dan Hurley and the thing about these UConn Huskies is he is still able to, even after their long win streak, even after being the defending national champions, even after winning the Double Big East title, he's still able to convince them that nobody believes in them. He's still able to convince them to play every single possession like it's their last. And so for Alabama, you got to do the same. You got to match that intensity while they're diving on loose balls, while they're getting their hands in the passing lanes. You have to be intentional with the basketball, making good, crisp passes. If you're making those dump-off passes in the lane to the bigs like Nick Pringle, look, that bounce pass probably ain't going to work on this Saturday night. It's going to be a challenge to flip that basketball off in the lane, make those challenging passes in the lane with a lot of traffic. I think that you have to stay. What's my number? I said 13 or fewer. 13 or fewer turnovers. Now, is that still a little bit too high? Yeah, I think Alabama, you want to go 9 or fewer if you want to be in this game. Now, for the flip side, you want to force some live ball turnovers yourself. Get out on the run and get some easy buckets. How can you, get out ahead of UConn? Can you turn over Tristan Newton? Can you get into some passing lanes? Can you get a Rylan Griffin run out? Can you get Latrell Wright still down the floor and get a couple or get some of those Nick Pringle alley-oops? You got to get, I think you have to force 7 or more live ball turnovers. Now, you'll take as many turnovers as you can get, but live ball, getting down the court, get some some fast break points. You want to get yourself 10, 12 fast break points. And really, I think the turnover margin, protecting the basketball and forcing turnovers, golly, that's going to be the name of the game. That's going to be the name of the game. If UConn forces Alabama, over 12 turnovers, then it's going to be an uphill battle for Alabama. It's going to be, and you're going to put a lot more pressure on your three-point shots. That percentage, that 40% percentage that I was calling for about 3 minutes ago, might need to be a little bit higher if you're turning the basketball over at a higher rate. And so that's going to be something to look out for. Mark Sears, Aaron Estrada, you've done a pretty good job through the first four tournament games. You're going to have a tall task on Saturday with the UConn Huskies and their defense. I mean, their defense is one of their top five. Yeah, number four in adjusted defensive efficiency, number one in offense, top five on both sides of the court. Alabama just has a huge task on Saturday. Now it's an 11.5 point margin. How do you feel about Alabama covering? You can talk about them winning or not all you want to, but I feel pretty good about Alabama covering the 11.5 point margin. And part of that is due to the pace, and part of that is due to the belief that this team has exuded amongst themselves through the first 2 weekends of the tournament. I think that at this point, if Alabama is going to lose to UConn, and I think that is probably the consensus opinion, if Alabama is going to lose to UConn, I think that at least Alabama fans will be able to hang their hats on the fact that the Crimson Tide is going to play hard and stay in the game. Now, look, if you're a gambler, this is just for fun. I'm not placing any monetary wager on it myself, but that 11.5 point margin, I think, is a bit disrespectful. To what this team has been through all season long and what this team's capable of. I think it's disrespectful to the ceiling. Now, maybe it is. Maybe it's that way because of UConn being so daggum dominant through the entirety of the NCAA tournament. I mean, shoot, 30-0 run in the Elite Eight. They were popping champagne with 5 minutes left to go in the game. They were cool. They were cooling. They were chilling. So maybe the 11.5 point margin is more about UConn and less about disrespect to Alabama. I think that they're going to have a real good chance to cover that spread. And, I do have a gut feeling that Alabama might surprise some people. Look, Seton Hall turned over UConn 17 times in their matchup with Kansas, Seton Hall, and Creighton. All three of them had 12 or fewer turnovers in their game. I think Seton Hall had 12, and Kansas had like 8, and Creighton had like 7. So you got to stay protecting the basketball and end every possession in a shot, preferably a high percentage shot. If you like that three ball by a high percentage shooter or a layup or dunk, we love that as well. So I think the keys really are make 16 or more threes at a high percentage, turn them over more than 7 live ball turnovers, and have 13 or fewer turnovers yourself. If you do that, Alabama, you might look up after under 4 minutes left to go in the game, and you might find yourself in great position to pull off an upset. Let's talk about. You want to talk about open practice and then Rylan Griffin and then Parker Brailsford? Let's do it like that. Let's talk about open practice yesterday. We got 20 minutes of open practice watching the basketball team. And the biggest takeaway for me was Latrell Wrightsell was in action. Now, he was in action with the twos, and that's great. You want to see Latrell back out there. He made a couple of shots, and you can see that on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. I think that you've got a good plan going into the game. I think that no matter what, you can be confident that Nate Oates and Ryan Pannone and Austin Claunch have put together a really good game plan to go up against UConn and say, you know what, I know Alex Caravan and I know that Donovan Clingan are a hell of a matchup, a hell of a 1-2 punch up front. And Tristan Newton's a great player as well. I mean, Tristan Newton is a hell of a player as well. Like, I know that the task is tall. I think that at the very least, Alabama's going to have a pretty educated game plan going into the matchup. Now, what was interesting that we saw yesterday in the Coleman Coliseum practice facility, a guy by the name of Erwin Dudley. You remember Erwin Dudley, 2002-3 SEC Player of the Year here at the Capstone. He's a graduate assistant. So my man's was out there simulating the Donovan Clingan role. And Chris Parker golly, he's going to be a hell of a player next year. He was dominating on scout team. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he was making a lot of plays on the scout team for the blue team, for the walk-on / scout team. He's not going to be obviously in the game redshirting all season long, and you're not going to burn his red shirt here with 1 or 2 games left to go in the year. But he was an exciting player yesterday in the Coleman Coliseum open practice session. You saw the guys doing a lot of cutting, doing a lot of communicating. You saw the guys, doing some defensive game planning where there was some helping in on the Donovan Clingan character, the Erwin Dudley figure. You had some doubling from Nick Pringle. With some help from, Grant Nelson and other guards. It looked like they might be leaving a couple of the players alone. A little bit of the North Carolina game plan. We're going to let some of their lower percentage shooters shoot some shots and see if they can be a hero and basically help down low on Donovan Clingan and Alex Caravan. So it's going to be a lot of fun Saturday night, 7:49 TBS. You're going to be able to follow it right here on BamaCentral with myself, Katie Wyndham, and Blake Byler. I don't know where we'll be. We'll be in the building, obviously. I don't know if they're going to put us courtside or up in the rafters. It's going to be interesting to see. It'll be my first Final Four. I am beyond excited to go to the Final Four. We're traveling out tomorrow, and we're going to get to see open practice on Friday. The guys will have a shooting session, and it's going to be crazy out there in Glendale. Hopefully you guys can make it as well. Come and join us. Come say hey out there at the Final Four. My 2 biggest takeaways were basically, 3, I guess. Latrell Wrightsell practicing, Erwin Dudley simulating Donovan Clingan, and Chris Parker looking really, really nice on the scout team. Let's go to practice. After practice, we had media availability. You bring in Rylan Griffin. Who did you get? You got Rylan Griffin. Was it Sam Walters and Grant Nelson? It was Rylan, someone else. Shoot, my brain's going. But basically, it was Rylan and Grant Nelson. I want to talk about what Rylan talked about. He was asked about what if Alabama beats UConn, what will it be like wrestling wise? Because we talked about it yesterday on Monday, the wrestling analogy, the Undertaker beating the Streak, Brock Lesnar beating the Streak. He compared it to WrestleMania 6, Ultimate Warrior taking down Hulk Hogan. And Ryland's really impressed me with his history a little bit because, Hulk was at that point a 6-year, he'd been going six years undefeated. He was on his second WWF heavyweight championship reign, and he was the face of WWF. Ultimate Warrior, he'd won the Intercontinental Championship and basically proven himself as kind of a hot mid-card, oh gosh, can he make a push to be the top face in the company? And ultimately, that's what he does. He beats Hulk. He beats Hulk Hogan. He avoids the leg drop, and he hits him with a big splash, and he gets the 1, 2, 3. And Hulk Hogan gives him the heavyweight title, and he's the double champ for the night. And basically ascends. That's Ultimate Warrior's biggest moment in his career. He never wins the WWF title again. And it is the biggest moment for Ultimate Warrior. And so, while hopefully Alabama has more than one WWF, heavyweight championship run in them, has more than one Final Four national title run in them, I think it's a pretty strong comparison given the strength. Hulk Hogan ran through people for 6 years in the 80s, in the late 80s. He had won the WWF title in WrestleMania 5 against Randy Savage and had gone the entire year unbeaten. The two guys, Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan, they kind of bump into each other during the Royal Rumble a couple of months earlier than WrestleMania, and that's how their feud got started. Basically, did Alabama run into UConn 2 years ago? Last year over there in Portland. You have the game in Portland. You got beat 84-67. Hulk Hogan wins that Royal Rumble. Maybe UConn won that national championship last year, but you see Alabama percolating, kind of being around, hang around. Is this Alabama's time to basically break that glass ceiling, take over, pin Hulk Hogan, pin the unpinnable monster. We'll see on Saturday. I really love the comparison from Ryland Griffin. We'll have to see. I'm very curious. Look, it's WrestleMania weekend. I know that this isn't wrestling podcast, so we're not going to talk about wrestling too much more, but it's WrestleMania weekend. I just have one small curiosity. It might be a silly thought, but I just have one small curiosity. Ryland Griffin, will it be a distraction for you? WrestleMania is a 2-night event. If you're not a wrestling fan, that's a-okay. It's a 2-night event. They're going to be a Saturday night event and it's a Sunday night event. Now, look, Alabama, Ryland Griffin, if you went on Saturday, great. Go watch WrestleMania on Sunday. Watch the main event. Basically, you're going to get Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns at the end of Sunday night, and great. But is the Saturday night day number one main event, day one WrestleMania? Will that be a small distraction for Ryland Griffin? I would guess it's not going to be, but it is just a small thought in my brain that I wonder if Saturday night's big event will be kind of hanging out in the thought process of Ryland Griffin. You're going to need Ryland out there defending Tristan Newton. You're going to need Ryland out there. He's your best two-way player. And he's been your best two-way player maybe all year long. I mean, I know Mark Sears has been amazing, but Mark Sears' defense has only really turned on over the last couple of months. The last couple of weeks, excuse me. I think Ryland's super important. Defending Tristan Newton, and you're going to want to get 3 or 4, hopefully more 3-point shots out of Ryland Griffin. So we'll see if he can embody his Ultimate Warrior and take down Hulk Hogan on Saturday night. All right, so let's finish this thing up. Let's finish this thing up with a little bit of football because, we haven't talked football in quite some time on the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral. And before we do, I want to thank everybody who has subscribed to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We're seeing our numbers go up. I really appreciate everybody who's tuned in and joined the family. You can send the show to a friend. Tell them to jump in and join us at Joe Gaither 6 on any social media machine. We're getting several friend requests on all my platforms, and I really appreciate that so much. Thank y'all. You guys make the show and make this so much fun. You can do that on any platform and always find us at BamaCentral as well. Look, let's talk about Parker Brailsford. We haven't talked about it because there wasn't a whole lot of hard information, and there's still not a whole lot of hard information. But let's circle back to last Thursday. Last Thursday, Alabama has its first scrimmage. All right, you know that. You got some notes out of the scrimmage. The run game looked good. The passing game looked like it could use some work. A lot of issues with pass protection. Okay, no big deal. It's the first scrimmage. You're literally doing baby steps. Everything is vanilla. Everything is still in learning mode. Not going to overreact to positive or negative performances. But one interesting storyline, the most interesting storyline to me, was the absence of Parker Brailsford. If you're unfamiliar with Parker Brailsford because you're not in football mode, you're like, who the hell is that? He is the center that transferred from Washington to Alabama after the spring, after the season. He enrolled. He came here with Kalen DeBoer. He came here with his offensive line coach. He came here with his former offensive coordinator as well. So Parker Brailsford, he was center last season for Washington. Joe Moore winning offensive line, second team all Pac-12 last year for Parker Brailsford. And everybody basically, writes it on the wall that Parker Brailsford is going to immediately walk right into and take over the Seth McLaughlin starting role. Seth McLaughlin, you all remember, transferred to Ohio State, issues with snapping last year. You don't want to relive it. We understand that. But you've got your center, you've got your man, James Brockermeyer, who has been waiting his turn. I think he's a fourth-year player now, going into his fourth year. You got James Brockermeyer out of Texas. He was a highly rated recruit, never really was able to break into the starting rotation due to being undersized. Let's be honest with ourselves, being undersized and having lots of injuries. Lots of nagging injuries has kept him from building consistency. And that's not really his fault. It's just due to, I think, a little bit of its undersized nature and it being very, very tough to play football in the trenches in the SEC, even right here on the practice field here at Alabama. But what we found out, or what we've known what we've learned over the last 7 days, is Parker Brailsford is a little bit on a leave of absence, is what it sounds like. Does Does it mean that Parker Brailsford is going to jump in the transfer portal? We don't know. I don't know. I want to make that very, very clear. I'm not going to say that he's jumping in the transfer portal because we don't know. I think that Parker Brailsford is just going through a little bit of a hard time, and what has been reported is that he's missed practice. You can get some of those reports on TideIllustrated.com. Tony Sikalis does a real good job with that. What's been reported is that he's missed practice. He missed practice on Thursday, and he missed practice the scrimmage on Thursday, and he missed practice on this past Monday. Now there's practice again today. I don't know if he's out there today, but a couple of spring sessions that he's missed, and that's where we're at. Parker Brailsford seems to be struggling with the transition from the Pacific Northwest to Tuscaloosa. And come on, let's be honest with ourselves. That's got to be a hard thing. It's got to be a hard thing. You have left a place in Washington where you've been for 2 years, you've established some roots, and you've come to Tuscaloosa. Yeah, some of the coaching is the same, but boom, within a couple of weeks of your transfer, your offensive line coach and your offensive coordinator, boom, go back to Seattle. Go back to Seattle and take jobs with the Seattle Seahawks. So now you've come and you've changed schools. And yeah, your new offensive coordinator, Nick Sheridan, you know him a little bit. He was in a different room in Washington. So yeah, you got a little familiarity there. And Kalen DeBoer is still there. But everything's new. The color scheme's new. The map is new. The timing is new. We practice in the morning. These guys practice in the afternoon right now. And yeah, they will move to practice in the morning in the fall. But everything is new. All my classes are in new places. I don't have the same friends. I think that what I have been kind of told is just that he's struggling with the newness. Does that make it right? Does it make it easy? Does it make it? I don't want to cast any judgment on him because, look, myself at that time, I struggle with new things even here to this day. I struggle with new things here even right now. So we will see what happens with Parker Brailsford. It sounds like he is welcome to come back to the program whenever he's ready, whenever he works through what he's working through. But it just sounds like he's struggling with transition. Will he jump back into the transfer portal and return to Washington or go somewhere else? I have no idea. I don't want to say one way or the other because no reports indicate anything. It just sounds like Parker is having a little bit of a tough time transitioning to Tuscaloosa, and we wish him the best as he does that. Now, what does it mean for Alabama? James Brockermeyer, you got to take you got to make the most of this opportunity. You have to make the most of this time where you are the unchallenged center. Now, you wonder if Joseph Ionata or if Casey Poe or if William Sanders, some of the new freshmen are going to work at center. But right now, you don't really have another center outside of Brailsford and Brockermeyer. You can convert somebody. I guess you can convert a Miles McVay, but he's really doing well at tackle is what it sounds like. You can convert somebody, I guess, but you don't want to take away Tyler Booker or Jaden Roberts. And so, yeah, do you want to get Parker Brailsford back and get him acclimated into the system and acclimated to Tuscaloosa and comfortable with everything so that he can excel and for his future? Yeah, you do. But James Brockermeyer's got to view this as a time where he can really take a huge step forward and say, you know what, Parker, if you come back to the team, great. I'll be your teammate and I'll help you. But I have earned or taken this starting role. And he's waited long enough. Dadgum. He waited behind Seth McLaughlin. He's battled He's battled through injuries. He's seen his brother transfer out of the program, and now his brother, a couple of weeks ago, it's come out that he has retired from high-level football, and good for him. That's fine. James, you've got a chance right here and now to maybe prove yourself. I wonder, my biggest concern for him is his size going into the season. And maybe you've got enough size with Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts to his left and right, respectively, that it won't matter. And James Brockermeyer, if you can snap the football consistently and call out the protections consistently and identify the defense consistently and execute to the best of your ability, this job might be yours. I think what you're dealing with right now with Parker Brailsford is a little bit of a not cold feet. I don't want to say that, but just struggling in a very, very new landscape with lots and lots of transitions. I think it really stunk when his offensive line coach went back to Seattle for him. I think he lost a very big. a very big, maybe Oliver, a very big source of familiarity as both those guys were maybe learning Tuscaloosa together as they're, and we'll see what happens with them. We're going to keep monitoring it. We'll keep following the reports. Alabama's got a couple more practices. They got Wednesday, and then they have a scrimmage again on Saturday before A-Day next Saturday. Could Parker Brailsford be back for next Saturday's A-Day? I think it sounds like he absolutely can. You just are kind of in a state of flux, in a state of question mark. You don't really want to say, what he's going to do because you don't know. I think it just sounds like he's struggling, just dealing with a lot of changes as a young man in a very pivotal part of his life. And so with all that being said, we wish him the best as he, works through whatever he needs to work through to make the decisions that'll work out the best for him. If you got comments on Parker Brailsford, you can always jump in and join us at Joe Gaither 6 on the social medias on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, or on BamaCentral at BamaCentral's YouTube channel as well. That's going to pretty much do it for the show today. We talked about keys to beating UConn. We talked about what we saw at open practice yesterday in the Coleman Coliseum news practice facility. We talked about Rylan Griffin, his comparison to the Ultimate Warrior. Can Alabama make its own breakthrough moment and become the face of college basketball, much like Ultimate Warrior became the face of WWF in WrestleMania 6? And then we finally finished things out with Parker Brailsford, wishing him the best as he works through a lot of things, transitioning from Washington to Tuscaloosa. We'll see if we can't see him back on the practice field very, very soon. And if that's not what's in his future, well, whatever it is in his future, we wish him the best from the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. That's going to do it for our show today. We're going to do a show tomorrow, but it's going to be kind of an oddball because we're traveling out to Phoenix tomorrow. We'll try to either do it early in the morning or it'll be late in the evening as we make our way out to Phoenix and the Final Four. We're so excited. You can follow us on all those social medias at Joe Gaither 6. As we get out to Phoenix, you can follow our time out there. I'll be making lots of photos and videos from what I see out there, and it's going to be a fun weekend. Will we make it all the way till Tuesday? Will BamaCentral be covering the Tide all the way till Tuesday? Or will BamaCentral be flying back Sunday? You let us know in the comments, and we'll be back to talk to you again tomorrow right here on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com.